Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students, in the tools and techniques of capture of tacit knowledge, uh, this is the second video of it. Uh, Here we talk about the actual tools and methods. The first one is the interview as a knowledge capture tool. Then we talk about the Delphi method, blackboarding, and repository grid. Okay, the interview as a tool, it's a commonly used in the early stages of the tacit knowledge capture. It's very flexible. Okay, it's a superior tool for exploring areas because you are one-on-one asking questions. You don't need to ask all the questions, but if you trigger a question, the expert can talk about many things. And the important thing is you are not only listening as a knowledge developer, but also you're watching the how he explains the things, how he the emotions in it, and because you're seeing also how the things, how the expert tells you. And if it is a very complex subject, so it's an effective technique for eliciting information about complex subjects. And if the problems, there are problems where we have the individual sentiments, so you cannot gauge it from the text, but in an interview you can catch those sentiments also. And there also the many people, experts like to be get interviewed. Okay, so that they talk about their expertise, that being an expert, they are produced being an expert, and when they are interviewed, they like to get interviewed. So this is really a nice way. And there has to be a voluntary nature of the interview is very important, because the person, because sometimes in a drawbacks of interview is that thing, the expert may dislike the person who is asking a question. Okay, so that makes the whole process go down. So therefore it has to be, interviewing needs training and preparation. Although it's a convenient tool for evaluating validity of information acquired. You can see if it's valid or not, because you are talking one-on-one with the interview, with the expert. So you got a first-hand, knowledge about the expert, rather than doing the other way. Now, interview can be of three types: structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. In structured, basically the questions and response are definitive. You can't, the specific question is asked, and then the answer is very specific. Okay, so we do these things when we need exactly information in particular subject, in particular area only. Then we talk about the structure. But in semi-structured, there are also the predefined questions, but there's a little freedom what the expert can, answer. But if it is an unstructured, neither the questions nor the specific responses are specified in advance. Okay, these are random questions, and any question can be asked, and answers has to be whatever the expert like to be. So these things happen when you want to explore things you don't know exactly, because you don't have a question, because you don't know the area, right? You don't know the area, so you can't have a predefined question for that. So you have to trigger things uh, when you interview the expert. Now in a structured questions, we could have multiple choice questions, we can have a dichotomous yes no type questions, or there could be a ranking scale in an order of, say, will you give a rank of 1, 2, 3, 4, or something like that. Or we could say A, B, C, D, some scale, maybe on a Likert scale. Now these are some guides to successful interviews. This is quite simple, and these things you need to avoid. You have to be in, synchronous with the expert. You can't do things without expert, without his permission, or you can't ask questions like you're interrogating, right? Which may, hurt the maybe sometimes the ego. Sometimes you are trespassing into the expert, and in his personal space by those questions, and then everything can go down. So that's why it's a very, interview. We have to be very, he has to be, proper training, and he has to understand how questions is to be asked and all. You cannot interrupt the expert, okay? um, or you put some question which put them in a defensive expert on a defensive mode, okay? Or you don't want to lose the control the session of I mean, you don't want to lose control of the session uh, by asking some questions which are either irrelevant or which are maybe provocative or maybe which makes annoy the expert and all that. So you have to be always in control. So as a knowledge developer, you can't pretend that you have understood thing when you haven't. So you have to ask more questions to actually elicit that tacit knowledge. uh, you can promise something which can't be delivered, or you bring agenda into it. So you have your personal bias. There could be in interviews that that's the drawback of it, that you have a personal bias and you want to put into it, or you have a personal understanding of the solution and you are trying to force that. You're asking questions so that the expert answer may fit into your agenda. That shouldn't be there. It should be unbiased, and whatever you have to ask and get knowledge, that has to be from the expert. Now if you don't do then if you have bias and you have communication problems and there are a lot more things, then uh, the interview has to fail. Now knowledge developer can make errors because of age, because of race, because of gender, and we can lead to all these problems, right? We could have a response bias, we could have inconsistency, that a knowledge developer is asking questions, one question on one topic, then he starts asking second question on second topic. That will bug out the expert, okay? There's communication difficulty here. The knowledge developer is not properly communicating. He doesn't have that vocabulary, or he may be having hostile attitude. He's talking very rude. uh, Questions are too standardized or less standard, okay, or questions are too lengthy, or it's a too long interview, your expert is getting bogged down. So you have to keep all these things in mind before going to the interview, before going to conduct interview. Now another tool which is used in a multiple expert knowledge capture system is the Delphi method. It's basically what we do is that we survey the experts. It's a survey of experts. Okay, we are doing the polling. We create a questionnaire and we give it to the experts. They give their responses because we have a very complex problem, maybe, and then the contribution of each experts are shared with the rest of the experts. Okay, by using the result from each questionnaire. So by that process, we construct the next questionnaire and again start polling again, right? The Delphi method actually gets its name from the ancient Greek oracle at Delphi, which is the municipality of the Greek this time. um, Oracle means actually something, kind of priest or some prophet or messenger of God, which gets the message from the God, right? So it gets its name from the ancient Greek oracle, which was located at Delphi, who was said to be able to look into the future. It's a kind of a legend that he was talking about the future. So how the Delphi method works in our case in capturing the tacit knowledge, right? Now it works like this. You have a panel of experts who are asked to prepare an anonymous opinion about some focused problem, dominant, right? Uh, each person is usually given a short written explanation of the problem. For example, you have an XYZ airline and you want to estimate when air cargo revenue of that company would equal its passenger revenues. Okay. Now, experts try to write stuff about it. Now, in a second round, we do the second round. Okay. And each expert is given the summary of the result of the first round, and we are telling them to give again make the anonymous estimate. Now they may see what other experts have done. Depending on that, maybe they change their statements or make changes in it, or may stick to it, or do something which they find, because others have also talked about the same issue. Now seeing that thing, there will be some kind of a change, and then in a step third, what we do is actually the step two is repeated two or more times. we get the responses, we again give it to the experts back. Now after they see it, they may change it and give the result, and this result again given to the experts 2 3 times. We repeat this cycle, and what will happen in the meantime is all the extreme estimates will have been deleted, and those that remain will converge on a narrow range of answers. So this way we converge to the solution, right? We give problem to the experts, they give their answers to that, and we those responses are given back to the experts again, and then they refine it. We iterate it, we give them in a again and again, maybe 3 4 times, and they refine it till we get the final solution. This is how Delphi method work. Now there are three important features of the Delphi method. First thing is the anonymity. This is the heart of it, because when you give the responses, you are not putting the name in with that. So the expert doesn't know whose response is this, because maybe it's your favorite guy. You may take his response only, or maybe you have a bias, you don't like other person even though his response was good. If it is not anonymous, anonymous means without name, okay, then it will you may discard that response even though that expert's response was good. So there could be the bias. So anonymity remove all those biases, and it makes it clear and clean. And you also have a controlled feedback, because you have an anonymity, you don't know what others have given. So what will do when you get a second chance of improving that, and you see the response of others, maybe the expert sees that, oh, others are given this way, and yeah, that's right. And because it's anonymity, there is no bias, so he can change his own response, and with that it becomes we can refine the solution. And the third thing is, what the final output we get is the statistical group response. So it's not a single, because it's anonymous, we don't know, no experts don't know whose solution it is. The solution which comes at the end is the solution of the whole group. It's a statistical group response, okay. It's an aggregate of each expert's response in the final round, okay. We take it as an aggregate, and it belongs to nobody. It belongs to not a particular expert, but it belongs to the whole group. That's very important. Now there are some limitations of the Delphi method. First, experts often lack the necessary knowledge on which to base their final judgment. It could be of the communication. Second, poorly designed questionnaires have been known to be less than effective in developing the understanding of the complexity of the problem domain. Okay, so therefore the knowledge developer has to be aware, and what are the consequences of using the Delphi method. He should be prepared for that. I will stop here. The next two methods, blackboarding and repository grid, we will do in the next video. So see you in the next video. Until then, ma salama.